Hey there, welcome Conscious Fashion friends to Inside Fashion Design's weekly community conversations. This is where you can meet and greet with a fashion industry pro. This is your opportunity not only to hear from the experts and their knowledge and advice, but also to connect with them directly to grow your network and use their learnings to level up and empower you in your own career. For 30 minutes each week, we will have a quick chat, the perfect morning break where you will walk away with some good nuggets of advice, tips and tricks, and two of my all-time favorite things, inspiration and community connection. I love building connections because it strengthens our support system. You grow your community and you grow your support, and we can all succeed together. I am continuously finding amazing people through LinkedIn and referrals, and 99.9% of the time, these folks also love to connect, share their experiences and stories, offer advice, and even more recommendations and suggestions. That's why each week you will find us here chatting with a fashion industry pro. So hop on in, join the conversation, say hello, ask a question, share your own tips, stories, favorite resources, or own piece of advice. Follow me on LinkedIn so you don't miss out. Every single week, we'll be chatting with a fashion industry pro. Are you a fashion industry pro and you want to share your story? Message me and let's talk. Who knows, you could be our next featured guest. Thanks for joining us today. Now, let's dive into today's session. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you're coming in from. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Britta Cabanos. I'm the founder of Inside Fashion Design, and you will find us here every Thursday at 10 a.m. West Coast time, Pacific time, talking with industry professionals. And we're really excited if you're joining us or even watching or listening to the replay, because we have such a great lineup of guests, and I'm very excited about today's guests, as I always am. But please chat with us, ask questions along the way. We're here to have a conversation, so join in the conversation with us. If you are listening to the recording, you can still comment and reach out for questions. And I'm looking back, kind of a funny note. I was looking back at some of the previous sessions that we've done, and I love sharing stories and talking about people and all of that. And I realize I'm babbling on and on a lot about the person before I get to the letting them speak. So I'm going to dive in really fast today because there's a lot of great story behind this guest. And after I just said that, I am going to say I met Shannon, I think about 7 years ago, and she was just starting this journey of what her mission has become. And so I'm so excited to catch up with her and hear all the progress she's made along the way. So without further ado, and without babbling on more, let's welcome Shannon. And Shannon, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So like I said, when we met, we were introduced many years ago, and you were just starting this mission of growing flax here in the Northwest, and you had the seeds, and I think you had some farm and soil, but you had no way to process it, no way to, no equipment, anything like that. And so now, 7, 8 years later, you've had some success and a lot of good progress along the way. So can you just start out telling a little bit about your journey? And I know you do have an apparel background and you were working in the industry before you started this journey. So yeah, what made you start or even want to tackle this huge challenge of taking a seed and trying to manufacture it all the way through to offer textiles here in the United States? So yeah,
Yes.
maybe to start at the very beginning and give us a little background of how that all came about.
Sure. I entered into this through kind of a passion of knitting. I have a background in textile and apparel design, but I entered into that through a love of knitting. I've always loved textiles, and I think that was an easy way. You know, you have a couple knitting needles and some yarn, you can make fabric. So it seemed like a way to get started on that journey. I did work for companies like Columbia Sportswear. I worked for some independent designers. I sold some of my own clothes. So I got to the point where I was developing products. And through that work, I felt a little dismayed at the materials we're using and the lack of natural fibers being used kind of at a large quantity. And so I started digging in kind of on my own, more on the fiber side of things, what are clothes made of, what is happening with natural fibers in my region and domestically, and realized there's a giant hole domestically around natural fibers. My favorite fabric has always been linen. I love working with linen. I love wearing linen. I also learned that my heritage grew linen. So I feel like there's kind of a rapport with linen that dug me, kind of drugged me into this. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, what, just random question on that is, what fabrics are being produced in the U.S. natural? I know there's probably some still production of materials, but I feel like it's probably more sportswear or wovens. On the natural side, are there any other things being produced here besides the flax that you know of?
Yeah, so cotton is probably our most in the U.S. Cotton is the one that we have the most infrastructure for, the most acreage growing, and there's a supply chain for cotton still here in the U.S. Wool is a little, it has a lot of holes, but you can pull it through a supply chain here in the U.S. Flax, the infrastructure is gone. Like, we had a history of flax for linen production, but that really fell away after World War II, and the rise of synthetics started to knock out. And then hemp fiber, there's a lot of effort around that, but it's similar to flax. It's having to be really reestablished and revitalized. But cotton is definitely the one that we have the most capacity for in the US.
Oh, thank you for that. Yeah, and I know hemp I became a little obsessed with several years back because I couldn't figure out why it was illegal to even bring in seeds. Like, there was such a big challenge, and the legal limitations that were around it. So I think we've progressed with that as well. But
absolutely.
Yeah. So you are the co-founder, Fiber Revolution, and also the National Association Linen Association.
North American Linen Association. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, and I know you have some slides to share just to tell us about, your work and these organizations. Do you want to dive into that?
Sure. We could share my slides. Fiber Revolution was co-founded by Angela Ortiz-Call and myself in around 2017 with the goal of revitalizing infrastructure and the production of flax for linen here in Oregon in the Pacific Northwest. And that work has really, since Angela and I started, about 8 years ago, that has really expanded throughout North America. There's a lot of groups working to get flax production back. So my journey, I entered into this through apparel and textile design in the industry, and then started to follow the work of Rebecca Burgess at FiberShed in Northern California, and worked with FiberShed really closely for over a decade. I ran the Pacific Northwest FiberShed, which is now, all of us have kind of went on to different paths, but we're all still very much embracing this soil to soil process. This system is kind of how we think about how to revitalize and rebuild this textile infrastructure, and being very mindful of natural fibers have this great ability to be composted, and so the whole supply chain has to really be mindful of that. My focus has fallen into flax for linen because it's a passion, but also here in Oregon, where I'm from, that we have a huge history of this production. At the height of our history, we had 18,000 acres of flax growing for linen, and we had over 14 processing mills throughout the Willamette Valley, and we were vertically integrated. We spun, we wove, we had products. So there was a huge industry here that really collapsed after World War II. And now we have nothing really. We're having to, like, down to the seed, we've had to rebuild.
Start completely from scratch.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let's see here. So Fiber Evolution's goal has been, we've spent a lot of time on developing seed, fiber flax seed. Part of these natural fibers not being produced here for so long is we don't have access to things like seed. And so we've, at Fiber Evolution, we've been working on scaling up some seed we got from Oregon State University here, as well as working with a seed breeder that's breeding new varieties that's more adapted to our current soil and climate. And we will be scaling up her varieties next year. And that's been like a decade of work on her part. So all these things take a lot of time.
A lot of patience.
A lot of patience and sticking with it. But Fiber Evolution is currently the only commercial scale of fiber flax seed in the U.S. that is grown in the U.S. And so we've managed to really scale that up.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And we continue to do that. And we've distributed to over 110 different groups throughout North America that are trying to get fiber flax going. So it's been a nice way to give us something to work with here to get started. The picture up in the left there, flax for fiber was a celebrated crop in Oregon. This is the Flax Festival, which is now our Oktoberfest. It used to be the Flax Festival. And everyone came out. It was a huge event. So flax was a huge crop here and was a huge crop in other areas like Pennsylvania, parts of the Midwest, the Northeast, all of which are trying to revitalize because it's really fallen off. And then that little barrel down there is flax fiber. That's in France, and that's our goal. So we always have this picture as that's our goal.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a big ribbon of beautiful fiber that comes out, and that's what we're trying to get the infrastructure for here in Oregon and other regions to be able to process. And then the one last thing is the harvesting equipment that Angela and I are standing on. We don't make those it's specialized. Flax is pulled from the ground. And so it took a long time to even find used equipment that we could import. We have our first set of harvesting equipment we used last season, and that's kind of a game changer. Before that, we were hand pulling, hand everything.
I remember. And I remember you telling me about how hard it was to find the machines, the equipment. And at one point, I think you found one, but yeah, it was overseas and it was going to cost whatever, tens of $1,000s to get it here. Or I don't know, maybe there was one here, but it had to be repaired because it had, hasn't been used for however many years. So that to me alone, just from what you've shared with me, is a huge accomplishment.
Yeah. And this equipment, Europe is over 80% of the current linen market. So France, Belgium, Netherlands, that's where over 80% of the world's flax is grown and processed. They make equipment for the field, but it's much bigger now. It's very expensive. Where we're starting at, we need the smaller equipment. They don't make that as much anymore. Okay. And so you're really sourcing used equipment, which people jump on as soon as they find it because there's just so little of it. Yeah. So there's an opportunity for machinery makers.
Yeah. Quick question, and you might get to it, but if other farmers start growing this and then they can harvest it, are they shipping it to someplace you're suggesting where it can actually be made into a textile, or where does it go once they've harvested it? So
currently in the U.S., we only have in the US, there isn't really any processing for flax fiber yet. There's groups working on building mills and building that infrastructure. So a lot of farmers are holding back a little bit on the scale they're growing at, because really it'd be stored until that comes in. There isn't really anywhere to send it to except Europe. And it's not impossible to do that, but shipping bales of straw is basically like shipping air for very expensive. And so I think that could be something you do very temporarily to test quality, to kind of get the fiber. But it's not a long-term solution. So there's definitely, there's going to be mills coming online, but they're not quite there yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
A lot of work ahead yet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this is something we're very proud of, but this is our crop as of earlier this week.
Oh, wow.
We had a beautiful season here in Oregon with lots of spring rain, sunny days. That's what flax loves. It loves, a little bit of rain. That's why it's so, it's mostly grown in Normandy, kind of that ocean air. This is 2 varieties we were able to source from Europe, the seed, and it's doing really well. It's about waist high now, beautiful, and it's starting to bloom. It gets these beautiful blue, purplish flowers, and the field just becomes kind of a sea of waving purple. It's really quite magical.
It almost looks like lavender, and it's so bright green. It's beautiful.
Exactly. And that's a sign of a really healthy crop, is that kind of vibrant green color that you get. And then the consistency of the stems, all those things are kind of what you're looking for. So this is very exciting. It's the first time we've grown European seed at this scale, and we're just really happy it's well adapted to our region. So
I'm so impressed that you went from the apparel industry as a corporate employer to farmer. You can call yourself a farmer, I think, and just the knowledge that you've gained and the success of seeing this image, it's just a beautiful outcome of all your work.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and Angela, this will be Angela and I's 8th season of growing flax together. And we've traveled the world, and we've met with, and I feel like over the years, we've learned so much. It's really exciting to kind of see it all start to come together.
That's sure.
Amazing. So kind of how this work at Fiber Evolution has expanded. For a long time, Angela and I were fielding constant daily calls and inquiries from different regions wanting to consult with us. How did you get the seed? How did you get the harvesting equipment? Things like that. And we did do a lot of consulting, and then we got burnt out.
Yeah.
To be honest, it's just a lot. So we worked with some other folks around North America and created the North American Linen Association, NALA. It's a 501c6 nonprofit trade association to bring everyone together as we rebuild and revitalize flax for linen here in North America. And we've I showed some examples of how we think of it, because people often ask who's involved in this supply chain. And you can see on the right there, a lot of people are part of the linen supply chain. I love textiles, but flax fiber is used in biocomposites, automotives, airplanes. It has a lot of potential. They're replacing carbon fiber with flax fiber. So there's a lot of innovation on that side of it.
A lot of opportunity. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And then the map kind of shows we currently have about 80 members, and it spreads daily. And we have a couple of big members from Europe that are machinery manufacturers that we're so excited about what we're doing. They joined NALA to be supportive, to help us. And we really see that as kind of a validation that what we're doing here is being taken seriously within the market. Yeah.
Yeah, you are building and getting recognized, and you'll be the go-to place for people to join in the efforts and have that resource. It's really amazing.
And so, yeah, I think that was kind of wrapping it up. But we often are asked, how can we help? How can we get involved? We are actively working on a fiber processing mill here in Oregon. So any resources as we fundraise, anything people think is helpful, we always love. We have a lot of people pass on, like, you know, anything, because it's a lot of capital to rebuild the infrastructure. And so we've been building it kind of bit by bit and trying to really cross that finish line to get the facility up and running. Also, if anyone's a grower that's part of this or knows growers, we're always looking for farmers who either want to grow the seed side or the fiber side. Those crops are grown kind of differently or separately. And then also we welcome members from any part of the chain to NALA. We have a lot of brands. We have a lot of makers because we're all part of this chain. And I think it's valuable to have as many people involved as we rebuild this. I like the perspective. Everyone has kind of a different perspective on this, or a lot of people join just because they love linen and they want it to come back. So
anyone can join. And if you're a small independent apparel designer, for example, or even working for a company, how can they get involved or support or, is there anything, nothing's for sale yet, right? Like it hasn't actually gone into an actual fabric that they could source or?
Yeah, exactly. We're not quite at the phase where things can be consumed yet. We just aren't there. But there was just this morning a great article came out in Vogue Business about, is linen fashion's most guilt-free fabric? Fiber Evolution was interviewed in that. I think it's well written and very honest. But the reality with linen right now is it's become incredibly expensive because of the lack of supply. There's way more demand than there is linen. And so it's getting hard to source and it's getting incredibly expensive. And so that's where we see North America helping kind of even out the market a little bit and bring some of those prices down. Because we'd hate to see linen just be a solely luxury item. I feel like the potential of it is too great for it to kind of fall that direction.
Yeah. Well, the history that you shared that here in Oregon, I had no idea it was that huge of a history. So to bring that back here and then to have an offering to more than apparel companies, as you mentioned, different industries, to have it domestic here where then a smaller brand or a smaller designer can just get it here, not have to import and, reducing some of those costs that are going along with it. So, do you have any idea how long or how much more time, or do you have a kind of a timeline of when we could see something like that? Like, is it a year? Is it 5 years?
What we're we're also held, all the machinery for the processing is mostly coming from Europe as well. And they're at capacity in a lot of areas. There's so much demand. There's more mills being built in Europe. So we're on the list to get equipment made for our facility here. And our goal is in the next year or two, there will be a processing facility in Oregon. And we have a lot of things in place that is working towards that. I would say that's a similar time frame for the other regions. The next year or two, we'll start seeing some mills being built here. And then once you can get the fiber to a usable state, that's what these mills do, is get it to that kind of like roving. Then it can go off to spinning, it can go off to weaving, it can go off to biocomposites. So it can really enter the global market while we rebuild things here. And that's kind of what we're all working towards. Until we get that first stage processing, this isn't going to go anywhere. There's no way to get the fiber.
Actually produced. Well, I'm so impressed with the progress that you've made. And I'm sure one of the biggest challenges was also funding. So Yeah. How did you,
Absolutely.
and I know you worked with Oregon State a little bit, but how did you start getting the funding and getting people to just support this, I guess, financially?
Yeah, I think that's been the hardest piece, and a little harder than I thought it would be, is just because the amount of capital it takes to rebuild these systems. We've worked closely with Oregon State and continue to, and they have the Hemp Innovation Center. And so we've been tapping into that a little bit. They're trying to expand their scope a little bit to be more bast fiber and not just
Mhm.
hemp, but pulling in these other bast fibers. We've had grants. We've had some private investment. So it's kind of been building that capital stack. But we still, it feels like a kind of constant fundraiser
Yeah.
because there's just, you're building your seed supply, you need field equipment, you have your operations. And so, yeah, I've learned a lot about fundraising. And I think that has been, I think one of the hardest pieces for all the groups is just trying to raise enough capital to support this.
Yeah. Well, you've made great strides and very impressive. So how could people, okay, so number one, I think people, designers or else, whatever else, they could join the website, and then there's all kinds of, I'm sure, updates and information there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And is it the Linen Association or the Fiber Revolution, or both websites is um,
We have a
the
ton.
yeah, go
Oh,
ahead.
go ahead.
Just could you talk about maybe the difference between the two, like as far as the website and information?
Yep. Fiber Revolution has a ton of information and videos. We've been documenting our work for the last 8 years. So there's a lot of resources on there to learn more about this. And then on NALA's website, we're building that out more and we're trying to add more. But as a member, you have access to a resource library, tons of networking. So I would say the Fiber Revolution website probably has the most. There's documentaries on there. There's lots of things that could help people kind of learn more about this whole.
Yeah. The membership on NALA, is that a free membership or a paid?
No, it's a paid membership, and it's kind of at a tier because we're a trade organization and we're a member run trade organization. Yeah.
Well, that would be a great way for people to support for sure, is by joining in. And do you have, I know you've done some events in the past, or you occasionally do events. Way back when, one I participated in was actually pulling by hand, harvesting by hand. And that was so much fun. It was a beautiful day and there was a whole group out there and we were harvesting flags.
Yeah, it's a
great experience. But yeah, do you have things coming up that people could just watch out for? And I know you also mentioned the farm that people can visit. So there's some ways to get involved like that.
Yeah. This season, because it's just been so busy, the flax is in bloom, and when we planted it, we planted a picnic strip so people could sit out in it. And so we're trying to hustle and maybe have a field day, but we didn't really get to a pre-planned field day this year. We are working with OSU on possibly doing kind of a conference at OSU. They would host it around bast fibers, and that would be early next year. But any events we have or anything that comes up, we always post to our websites to kind of keep people up to date. I think we did lots of events over the years, and this season it got out from under us a little bit.
Yeah, well, you've been so busy. I mean, it sounds like, I can't imagine what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. Like, what does your typical day look like? Fielding phone calls and then you reaching out, trying to get more resources and access to tools that you need. So I imagine every day, your day is quite filled. Yeah.
Yeah, I often remind myself that I did this because I love and want to make fabric, but I'm not doing any of that yet. Like, you're doing all the other pieces to get there where you can actually make the fabric. So, yeah.
I guess that's what it's like as an entrepreneur, a business owner. And, you end up doing all of these admin, I guess, for lack of better word, but all of this other behind the scenes stuff, the financial, the planning, the the outreach, all of that. And I think you're just a very strong, inspiring testament to, your vision, and your passion is the material, but showing what you need to do to get there, and you just keep going. So it's inspiring and impressive and a great story. So I encourage everyone to, go to the websites and stay tuned on the progress and support this, because I want to buy. I think when I first met you, I wanted to design, a collection with linen. And, yes, there's beautiful linens, like you mentioned, all over, Europe, but the cost to ship them in for sure is a little prohibitive, especially for a smaller designer. And so fingers crossed that it's, in the not too distant future, that we've got this economy going on here, this process that is going to build the local economy. It's going to support the apparel industry in North America. All positive things that you have been working towards. So any last words of advice or suggestions for people if they want to get involved or learn more? Or I don't know, do you have a favorite other resource for learning, or
I do have a favorite resource for learning, because I spend so much time on their website. There's in Europe the confederation around their linen industry is called the Alliance of Flax, Linen, and Hemp. And they have their website has so much information. They do these great economic reports that really lay out what's happening in the linen industry. They have there's some access to sourcing if you're looking to source linen. So we spend a lot of time that they're kind of an endless resource, and that's where most of the world's linen is coming from. So they really are the experts in the industry.
Say the name one more time.
It's the Alliance Flax, Linen, and Hemp. And,
okay.
If you Google, they used to be the CELC, and then they rebranded, which is kind of sometimes the rebranding can get confusing.
A little confusing. Yeah, just Google that and I'm sure it'll pop up. So we are out of time. Surprisingly, again, goes very fast. Thank you for all the sharing your story and your journey. And people can reach out to you and connect with you through LinkedIn. And again, if you're watching this as a replay or listening to it, the recording, you can still comment and ask questions and reach out to either one of us. And we're happy to connect and provide more, information or answer questions as they come up. So thank you, Shannon, so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And good luck. And I want to come visit and have a picnic out there, and attend the field day. So I'll watch for that. And we'll see you on the next one. Thanks for joining today.
All right. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.